I'm Tim, welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. We are back to Monday Mailbag, and we are hot and heavy with your questions from across the internet. I'm here with my guest from the Watch One sales team, Jason Main. Jason, welcome to the party.
Thank you for having me.
Jason is a true watch collector, connoisseur, and expert. He's been in the luxury watch industry for over 10 years, and he's actually going to do an introduction in just a moment so you can get to know him better. He can field all the questions that our sales team usually does with regards to markets, exchanges, popularity of references, but he also comes from the primary side, which means he's sold new watches for a long time. He brings that too. If you want the quick hits, we have my Watch You Want Watch Reviews channel. It's my new channel online where you can watch me in 6 to 7 minute quick hits, sound bites, and of course the old-fashioned talking hand format. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself, your past experience, favorite brands and models, current collection. Where'd you come from and how'd you get here?
Started just kind of getting into myself, collecting a little bit, doing some trading, and took an opportunity with Tourneau.
And how many years ago was that?
I was with Tourneau for 10 years, just over 10 years.
So you started as a collector in your own right. You went to Tourneau, and I know at that point you did work on the primary circuit, but you also helped to establish their pre-owned sales program.
Yeah, so started with a division called. It was basically their Hamiltons, their more budget and watch gear section, and then moved into the ink side, so pretty much all the prominent brands. And then about 5 years in, moved to their certified pre-owned department and kind of helped get the Southeast market for that established.
Now this is interesting too because Jason was there for the rollout of Tudor in 2013, the relaunch of the brand in the US, and then again in 2015 with the launch of their in-house calibers. We have a question about those tonight, so he's going to give us some interesting insights on both counts. Let me ask you, what is your favorite brand and what are your favorite models, or just what kind of watches do you like in general? Because I know you collect.
That's a lot. I like them all.
Okay, fair enough.
It's kind of so it's a tough question.
You're like me. You've got the Swatch Sistem 51 and the JLC.
I've got a wide variety. I would say I started with like the Breitlings and the Omegas, moved into Panerai. Panerai, Breitling, Omega, I'd say is pretty much my wheelhouse as far as what I personally like to wear. Something 42 to 44 millimeter, sport oriented. It's kind of my.
And like, how many watches do you have in your collection?
I'd say,
where is it at this point?
It used to be a lot. I've pared down. I've gone a lot more for quality over quantity over the years. So I've done that. I'd say it's probably around 10 now.
So that's an interesting start because you started buying and selling out of your collection. Then you bought a lot of watches, and then you kind of honed it down to the watches that you really loved. And I think a lot of collectors can relate to that. So let me ask, what are you wearing tonight?
So tonight's actually my newest watch. It's the PAM 510.
Yeah, here, give me that. I'll do the hand model thing.
It's only, I've had it for a couple months. It's been through 5 or 6 straps already, such as Panerai. So PAM 510, 8-day in-house movement.
I don't know quite. My macro camera is closed up, so I have no idea how close I am. But anyway, guys, PAM 510, 8-day in-house caliber. What is it on? It's on an extraordinary strap there, I know.
Yeah, so this is a Horse green camo strap. They make these custom. Pretty cool straps, and I think we were giving a couple of these away with some purchases lately.
This is going to tick me off, so I'm opening up the rangefinder viewfinder on the macro camera there. Sorry guys, breaking the fourth wall there. Yeah, I mean that's an awesome watch, and I think that's a Panaristi's Panerai.
Yeah, something simple. I wanted essentially a PAM 111, but the newest generation possible.
And so tonight we'll go with my wrist shot. You guys have seen my Duomet. This is the crazy one right here. I finally own it, courtesy of my mom, who watched one of our older shows where we did the sub 500 watches, the Memorial Day 500 special with Fed. She sent me a Sistem Frog in the mail. Thank you, Mom.
Yeah, it's a cool watch.
I have to say, your green strap's probably going to last longer. I like the color of mine better.
Yeah, it's definitely more vibrant.
By the way, guys, Federico is talking watches live in our chat box, so if your browser gives you the live chat box functionality, Fed is answering your questions fast and furiously, as quickly as he can type, or I don't pay him. So, Jason, let me ask, what's your Grail watch? What would you add if you had your druthers?
All right, so I get this question a lot. If I'm going to say Grail, to me, there's two different kind of ideas about this. Grail is like I'll probably never own it. For me, I like to think goal.
Okay.
Okay, so probably the next 5 years or so, AP 15400 stainless steel blue dial. It's kind of my
41
next
millimeter
5 year 41
stainless steel.
millimeter, just iconic, everyday, beautiful. Love the bracelet, something you could wear. You know, that's kind of my next 5-year watch.
Okay, so that's your Grail watch, and let's take that other definition of Grail, the insane, improbable thing where you win the lottery. What's that?
I like to get that new Paul Newman they just found out in the wild.
The Paul Newman.
Yeah.
The one of one.
But I don't know, maybe a chapter 12 or something super complicated.
Okay, so okay, perfect. Yeah, you mean like a Harry Winston Opus 12?
Yeah,
that guy?
the Opus 12.
Yeah, that's one of the most animated. I think that was Boucher. That's a cool watch. That's one of those Grail watches. For me, it's like the Opus 8. It's the watch I'll never own. I'll probably never even see. I can relate to that.
I've seen one in person, and it's everything you'd think it'd be.
Yeah, for me, that's something like a JLC Gyro Tourbillon 3, or the Reverso Tribute Gyro Tourbillon, or maybe something crazy like the Vacheron Constantin Sputnik. So I can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we got some questions coming in, guys. By the way, I should mention that tonight we are focusing entirely on your questions. I am watching the chat box, so as we work through the questions you actually emailed me, we're going to be ready to take it up live, and Jason's going to be flying shotgun, helping me out. So Tanner C asks. Tim, I know you're a major JLC fan. I thought I would ask for your take. This or that, Master Geographic in stainless steel. We're talking the SIHH 2017 sector dial version, or the Master Ultra Thin Moon Phase black dial. I think I want to say the 2016 version. So he wants to know, which one would I take, the new Master Geographic sector or the Master Moon Ultra Thin? Well, here's the thing. Really, you got to ask yourself, do you want a date? Because the Master Moon has a date. And the sector dial Master Geographic has actually lost that functionality as they pared down the features and pared down the price. So I see the Moon Phase actually being an automatic watch with a date, and the Geographic being a dual time of sorts. So I really like the Master Geographic, but in this case, I would go with that Master Ultra Thin Moon Phase, just because the combination of the steel with the black dial, for me, just is overpowering, versatile, and there's kind of a weakness to the silvery sector dial of the new Master Geo. What do you think about it, Jason? Both 39mm, both steel, black dial or silver?
I think the Moon Face adds a certain romantic aspect to the watch. It is what JLC is supposed to be. It's supposed to pull at your heartstrings when you wear it. And I think for me, that'd be the obvious choice.
And I think that's a great thing to mention, because the Master Ultra Thin Moon actually has a date, which is practical, radially arrayed around a moon phase, which is romantic. So you really kind of get something you can use and something that's just nice to have.
Right.
It's got the emotional pull and the intellectual one. Whereas I think the Master Geographic sector dial, while it is my favorite of the sector dials, the 3 that came out this year, I think we've got an option that unites both. The Master Geographic 38mm in steel, the black dial that was pre-2005. Almost the size of the Master Moon Ultra Thin.
Right.
And same functionality as the Geographic, but it adds back in the date and the power reserve scale. It's almost like we've combined these two watches into one watch that already existed a decade ago.
Plus, we get to go find it pre-owned.
Yeah.
At a little bit better price.
I mean, this particular generation of JLC Master Geographic, I mean, realistically, you could expect to pay $5,000 to $6,000 for that pre-owned.
And find a nice one.
Yeah, like you could get the box, you could get the paper.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. We like both of the current models. It's just we're pre-owned guys, so we see everything that's out there, and my thought immediately springs to the watch that gives you your cake and lets you eat it too. Okay, so Jason, this is an interesting question now, coming from John B. He says, "Greetings, I've enjoyed your videos and reviews on YouTube. I think I've watched them all." That's like 3,000 at this point, John. I'm impressed. So I was wondering if you and Mike, or in this case, me and Jason, might give our thoughts on the Tudor MT56XX movements in an upcoming video. Okay, they launched in 2015 in the Pelagos, and Jason corrected me. It was the MT5612, not 21. The 21 is in the North flag. And they filtered out through the line. And we've seen that even Breitling is getting into the act with the so-called caliber B20 this year. Just let me know, what was it like being in Tourneau when the factory reps rolled in and started selling you on the talking points?
Well, so I love Tudor. Yeah. I think Tudor, the value proposition for Tudor, and I've said it many times before, there's not much else on the market that gives you that kind of bang for your buck. But at first with the ETA movements, it was the ETAs are great, they're serviceable by any watchmaker, they're very robust, they have a long history, and then comes along
in one model year.
Right, and then next year you get the model that's, well, we're no longer doing ETA because it's an inferior movement. We're doing in-houses because they have to.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, the in-house movements are really nice. For not much more money, if anything else, you're getting a 70-hour power reserve. In some of the models, like the Pelagos, I think they make sense. Whereas in the North Flag, with the very, the decoration is not, leaves a little bit to be desired. So Pelagos, the new Black Bay, I like the in-houses, maybe not so much on the North Flag, but it's a good movement. I mean, I haven't heard anything bad about them as far as mechanically.
Yeah, there have been no horror stories, and just in terms of my own comparison of them mechanically, if you compare them to a standard, like the Rolex 3135, which is appropriate because Rolex and Tudor are, brother and sister, or father and junior, depending on how you want to look at it. But the 3135 is like your standard three-hand date Submariner Sea Dweller power plant. It's also in the Datejust. Now, that watch movement is thick, but it's also kind of tiny at 28.5 millimeters. The MT56XX family is almost 34 millimeters. So even though it is very crude in its decoration, it is sized for a bigger watch and a bigger display case back, which is something you'll never see on a Rolex. I mean, there's been the prints and nothing else in terms of display case backs. The other thing is 28 jewels versus 31 for the 3135. The Tudor has 28 jewels. I think that's a little bit of decontenting going on. I think they've probably saved the jewels in the reversing system by simplifying the Teflon double reversing wheels that Rolex uses into a more basic system with, I believe, some click springs built in. And they use Inca block shock protection to save some money. And you will notice that on the balance assembly, it's free sprung with a full bridge Rolex style, but they're using a silicone hairspring. Yes, it makes it amagnetic, but it's also cheaper to make and an industrial process versus the Breguet overcoil and the Parachrom blue alloy. So I think for the money, Jason, like you said, with a chronometer certificate, it doesn't get much better than this for the price. There are some changes. Yeah. It's not as good looking a movement as the 3135. Yes, some money saved on the hairspring, some money saved on shock protection. But overall, I mean, that's pretty much as close as you can get to a Rolex caliber for that kind of money. And it's got some assets that Rolex didn't introduce for a while, like the 70-hour power reserve. You still can't get that one on the 3135. Sure. It's still rolling out throughout the line in Rolex. Now, like you said, there are no horror stories. You don't think it's a great looking movement, but if you could choose between a Pelagos or a Black Bay, ETA or in-house, do you pay more for the in-house caliber?
I don't think so. I think, I think most watch guys will say they love ETA.
Yeah.
And I've had some ETAs that have just been fantastic. If I was going to pick one Tudor, it'd be the Black Bay Black, and it'd be the ETA movement. So, for two reasons. One, I love the Black Bay Black. Yeah. It's a pretty watch. I love the ETA movement. Second reason, it's the shortest run of any Black Bay with the ETA movement. So, long term, it's going to hold a little bit better in value.
And that's an absolute fact. I mean, rarity, especially with Rolex and Rolex family members, is everything. When it's something that's almost completely intangible, like a couple of hash marks or a crown on a dial, people make a huge deal over it. When it's something like an entire movement rarely seen, like with the manual wound Tudor Submariners of the 60s, you want an automatic and a dive watch, but the fact that it was so rare and it was the first ETA Tudor Submariner makes it hugely collectible, and I think the Black Bay Black, like you said, is going to be exactly like that with the ETA movement. Plus, let's be honest, the ETA movements, they're indestructible, and any good watchmaker can take one in any grade and make it keep chronometer time. Yeah, I think that's the good call. Now, interesting questions coming in. We have a question from Dendrabades, who's asking, which JLC to buy? I like the Reverso Tribute 1931 Rouge. This was a 2012 boutique special. I agree. Awesome watch. The Grande ultra thin, less than 8 millimeters thick, big, broad, modern in size, gorgeous gloss lacquered red dial. To me, that's one of the very few JLC tribute watches that surpasses the original. I mean, you've seen the Rouge before. I don't know if Tourneau had them, but what a watch.
You see them here and there. Gorgeous piece. I mean, if you're going to go, I don't know if it's the first JLC, but the Reverso for me has got to be your first JLC.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't yours.
It wasn't mine, but I made up
for
for
me,
lost
it's
time.
like the iconic JLC, you know?
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's an icon, and for me, the Rouge is the greatest. I mean, I'm going to set aside my prejudice towards the Platinum No. 2 Tourbillon and the Septantième and say that that's probably the greatest modern Reverso, minimally the greatest modern simple Reverso with the traditional buff steel caseback. That's a really nice watch. So this is an interesting question because one of our users actually came to me with a couple of job questions, and I normally don't give employment advice, but hey, what the heck? Names and locations have been changed here to protect the innocent. Wendy T asks, I enjoyed watching and listening to your show regarding Breitling's buyout by CVC Capital Partners. I was searching online for more information on Breitling and trying to gauge how successful it will be in my domestic market based on previous sales and also in comparison to other luxury watches out there. I've been offered a job with Breitling as a manager at a boutique. However, I also have another job offer that is more stable. I've been weighing the pros and cons of both jobs. I have a passion for luxury watches, but the other job has amazing hours and benefits. So here's the question. How well do you think Breitling will do in City Deleted, by my discretion, where Richemont is planning on opening 4 separate boutiques, including IWC and Panerai, in the luxury wing of a mall at the same time? Jason, she's asking, do we think these are competitors? Will they suffer based on our reviews of, and by they she means Breitling, suffer on our opinions expressed herein that their watches are too large and poorly keyed to the present market? Rolex is also present across from the Breitling store. Is there just too much competition? Let's start with the basics. IWC and Panerai, we see these as competitors along with some Rolex models.
Absolutely.
This is a lot of built-in competition for one corner of a mall.
It happens all over the country, unfortunately, and at first that's a long question.
Yeah, that's like 18 questions.
Yeah, so absolutely, there's competition. I've myself worked in a mall environment where boutiques were prominent. Must have had 15 boutiques in one mall, and high-end mall, high-end clientele, but still very competitive, especially with these brands, which certainly fall in that price point.
Now, IWC and Panerai, I see those actually as being a bigger competitor to Breitling within this location, this mega complex, than Rolex. I think the person going for a Rolex in general is going for the Rolex name, and there's going to be very little cross-shopping. Otherwise, how else would they sell out every year with 1 million watches made? Whereas with IWC, Panerai, and Breitling, there's a large amount of inventory on the market right now. Boutiques of all 3 brands, less so Panerai lately, but certainly IWC and Breitling. There is metal and steel under $10,000 ready to move.
Yeah, for sure. Going to the point of the Tudors, I think Tudor is definitely a more viable competitor at that price point than the Rolex would be. But yeah, I mean, I don't think also to go to the point of the question of whether or not our reviews do anything to affect the brand. I don't think anybody's doing anything to Breitling besides Breitling at this point.
There is kind of an own worst enemy phenomenon there. I'll be honest, I love the Breitling brand. I think it has a history that's second to none. And the way the watches are put together, especially now that the B01 is pretty much troubleshot, the troubleshooting is done. Great products, very tough. And again, they did make the B01 right. It's an impressive caliber now. But just having all of this brick and mortar retail, factory owned stores in a mall, that's like stacking disadvantages.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, she's asking too, should I take a stable job with great hours and benefits or move into Breitling just as it's been bought out?
Yeah, it's important to note too, like, I have a Breitling Steelfish.
Yeah.
And I've had it for 10 plus years. Fantastic watch. I don't think the build quality is the question.
Never
They make
has been.
phenomenal watches. It's more like the business aspect of how they conduct business. So.
Yeah, and I think you just saw malls. We have like this expression in the U.S., dead malls, and there are tons of them. It's because malls internationally are declining as a place to hang out, a place to do business. They're not the commercial centers and like dollar funnels that they used to be. Malls in a lot of ways represent the state of the art in retail circa 1985.
Right.
Like Marty McFly would be all over this Breitling job. if you weren't already working for Doc. So my take is that last year Swatch and Richemont have dramatically culled sales and operations personnel, especially in North America. Traditional retail, especially that built around malls, has struggled. Jason, you've seen Tourneau, which in the U.S., 116-year-old company, luxury powerhouse. They used to be the name if you wanted to buy a watch in the era before the brand boutique. And I feel like all of the Tourneaus back from Long Island, like Walt Whitman, Roosevelt Field, Penn Station, even the Time Machine, these are all gone or fading. What happened to Tourneau, and how does this kind of apply to the whole mall retail mentality?
I think, we used to have the "We Are the Authority," which, comes across. It used to be very luxurious. It used to be a teaching place. It used to be where guys would come in and actually learn, and there was a lot of passion there. And then it became something that was a little bit more snooty and a little bit more like we are better than everybody. Pricing got a lot tighter. Demand for some of the product that we had wasn't as much as it used to be. Sometimes you had a hard time getting certain brands. So, it's like anything. I think Tourneau probably hurt itself over the last couple of years with consolidating.
Yeah, and I think maybe there was a slowness. I know you worked with their pre-owned. I think there's probably a slowness to emphasize that and help it reach its potential. There's always going to be that conflict when you have new watches in a case a few, square feet away.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like not only is mall retail in the luxury watch space declining, but I almost feel like the brand boutique, like the type Wendy's discussing, this was the 2000s were the era of the factory store, the obsession with brand boutiques. Richemont at one point, over 50% of their revenues from company stores. Swatch saw that. Everyone saw that and said, I want a piece of it. There was an explosion of expansion of boutiques, especially in mainland China. And now a lot of those are being scaled back or closed outright today. Like bad leases,
right.
Reduced brick and mortar retail foot traffic, especially in malls, the growth of online retail, the growth of the aftermarket, including pre-owned, the 2014 to 2017 watch market contraction, excessive company-owned inventory. I think brands are beginning to realize you don't necessarily want to own the retailer.
I think a lot of these brands, like when the boutiques first started, a lot of the retailers would say, well, it's a fad. It's not going to last. Well, it's a size measuring contest, or like they're just going to put it out there and see what happens. And a lot of us said it wasn't going to last. And we're starting to see them maybe bite off more than they could have chewed before. And unless you're like a Swatch, you have Omega, unless you have that money, a lot of these boutiques are just bleeding out and reducing now. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen boutique after boutique close, and this is almost irrespective of brand. There was dramatic overexpansion during the 2000s, and now we're seeing contraction. Part of it's in step with the diminishing luxury watch market, but part of it's also simply an exhaustion of the concept. It never reached its potential. It was basically the watch manufacturers making the same mistake that Ford made during the 2000s and which McDonald's made compared to some of its competitors, which is if you are an authorized dealer, licensee, or franchise model, let the dealer own the physical retail space, the floor space. Let the dealer hold the inventory. Don't be stuck with factory boutiques full of unsold inventory and bad leases and local taxes and employees who have to be hired to man the space with all attendant benefits. Look, just sell watches, and I think the watchmakers are getting back to that now. And again, Ford sold all of its company-owned stores here in the U.S. McDonald's is trying to rid itself of its McDonald's company-owned stores to go to a pure franchise model like Subway. That's just the way. I know the watch industry is in a completely different echelon of price and status,
sure,
but it's the same kind of phenomenon.
I mean, it applies.
I do believe this, though, Jason. I don't believe that retail is dead. I believe that local authorized dealers are going to be centers with close links to their community and clients. They're going to be education centers, like you described, getting back to that. They're not just going to be showrooms for the internet where people go and take a picture with their phone and then buy it online. They will have online operations.
Sure. And they have to.
They have to.
Yeah. And
they'll also have pre-owned. But it's best left to local authorized dealers that are licensees rather than the company store.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of the future. Now, maybe you could speak to this, because you dealt with Nomos at Tourneau, right?
A little bit.
Okay, so Mark V asks, Tim, Jason, I was looking online at the Nomos Glasuta Ludwig with the manual wind movement. It comes in 35 millimeters and 38. I have an approximately 6 2/3 inch wrist, a little bit bigger than mine, guys. well known from my videos. Are these watches with their in-house manual wind movements reliable, dependable, and accurate? What can we say about these?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Absolutely.
Reliable, yes. Dependable, yes. Absolutely accurate. I personally, I really like Nomos. I don't think there's another watch that you can buy for a couple $1,000 price point with that quality of movement in it and pretty much trade for equal value. I mean, they trade really well in the secondary in a under $2,000 range.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you like a very simplistic take on a watch, if you like that very, German-esque design, then I think they're winners.
And it's important to note that the particular model he's mentioning uses derivatives of Nomos's Alpha caliber, which back in 2005 was their first in-house movement. So it's not just that you're looking at a very solidly designed manual wind caliber, so you've already eliminated the complexity of an automatic winding system. But this is their oldest family of watches, the one they've been building for over a decade. All the troubleshooting was done long ago. This is the best product you can buy from Nomos. So again, 35 or 38, that's your choice. I will say this, I've got right here a 35 millimeter Nomos. Now this is the Tangent Datum Gang Reserve. This 35 millimeter watch can hold its own on a wrist with just about anything. Don't underestimate their 35 millimeter cases. They have beautifully shapely lugs that fill out your wrist. I would say try on both the 35 and 38, and I think this is a good example of where traditional retail does make sense.
Sure.
You need to go in and wear the watch.
Try it on, make sure it's the one for you.
Exactly. I'd also say fundamentally these are simple calibers. Like Jason, we've got right here this Delta, which is basically the Alpha with a power reserve and a date, and it's manual wind. It's 23 joules. It's very conventional in its architecture, which is to say it's reliable in action. Nomos was smart about the way they designed these. Now today they do have the swing system, their own escapement. They do have their own hairspring. They do have their own balance. They're just as reliable. Again, there's nothing in here that a watchmaker anywhere can service. There's no proprietary palladium screws or silicone hairsprings or ceramic components. They're just solid. They're great value for money.
I would also add, just from looking and collecting myself, it's very hard to find a mechanical power reserve in a moderately priced watch nowadays. I mean, so it's a good option.
And it makes sense. In a manually wound timepiece, a lot of people don't like the redundancy of the power reserve on an automatic watch. I don't mind it, but it does make a lot of sense in a manually wound caliber.
Sure.
And it animates the dial a little bit. So if you like Nomos, you just don't want to go quite that austere, the German Werkspannenschaft pre-Bauhaus philosophy is too much for you. You can add a little bit of complication with something like this, but the Ludwig is kind of their very formal. I mean, if every Nomos has a little bit of formality, the Ludwig is their dress watch.
The most, right.
So questions coming through. Guys, Jason and I are here to answer your questions. We're not quite at half an hour, so we've got a lot of time tonight to talk about what you guys like, what you guys don't like, and what you want to ask us. Okay, so here's a question coming from Frips1000, just to revisit a topic that we explored earlier. Would you go with the Tudor Black Bay first or in-house caliber? We touched this, ETA or in-house, but you had a very pointed, specific recommendation.
Yeah, I would. I mean, was 20 minutes ago, so my
folks
mind
are just
hasn't changed.
joining us.
But Black Bay Black at a movement is where my money's at on a bracelet. You get the pre-riveted bracelet, which I prefer. You get the most handsome dial color, in my opinion, and you get something that's going to hold a little bit better collectability than the other Eddas.
So here's an interesting question coming from one of our users who's asking us, okay, this is great because it's right up your alley, because you mentioned earlier in the show the Royal Oak 15400 from AP, and this is your potentially doable Grail watch, as opposed to the Crazy watch.
Right.
Now, this gentleman is already an owner of a Breitling Transocean chrono, and he's weighing the 15400 steel black dial against an FP Journe Chronomat Bleu.
I mean, wow, that's a tough complication.
Complications with uncomplicated watches. You finally achieved the impossible, Internet. Congratulations.
I'd have to stick with the 15400. Just pulls at my heartstrings. It's what I want, so I wouldn't steer him wrong. Although I think he said black dial, and I'd have to strongly urge you to take a look at the blue in person.
Now the blue is generally reserved to AP boutiques.
Correct. So you get the exclusivity of it. I mean, and I think personally it's just a little prettier, but... Yeah,
I think the 15400 is going to have a little bit more wrist presence, so, I mean, if you've got a big wrist, that's something to consider. The Chronomat Blue will be dwarfed by a larger wrist. The 15400 is a nice intermediate step between the 39 millimeters of the Jumbo and the 42 of your entry-level Royal Oak Offshore. So you would go AP 15400 and not look back.
I'd still stick 15400. It might take me a little while to decide.
Okay.
But I think that's where the outcome would be.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. Other questions coming in now. A lot of interest in the Nomos brand. Okay. So, ZZ, I need to sell my watch on eBay. I live in Europe, but I am afraid to be scammed. Do you have any advice for eBay users, sole sellers who've never experienced the format?
Yeah.
I know you have some experience there from the old days, the Wild West.
I probably would not recommend going in on your own on eBay. It's tough. Unless you've done it a bunch of times, there's a lot of horror stories. I would say if you're going to go ahead and do it, just cover all your bases. There's a lot of forums, there's a lot of information about eBay, who you sell to, how you sell, how you take payment is very important. Obviously no cash on delivery, which I've heard thousands of times. It's tough. Give me a call. I'll buy the watch.
Yeah, exactly. This guy right here will buy your watch. Simple. Yes, we do buy watches from Europe. Also, a question coming through, which is an interesting one. Tyler J asks us, if I'm looking for a watch that isn't in our stock, Jason, new or pre-owned, we have networks we can reach out to. Can we get a watch that is not in our stock?
Absolutely. Or we'll try very, very hard.
Yeah, we have ways. This guy right here, I think Jesse, who's operating the switcher tonight, is at the controls, and you can see Jason's contact information. Not only will he buy you your watch, he will help you buy a watch. This guy does it all. Okay, so questions coming through. Here's a question from Mike Breikovic. Jason, when you were a solo show, buying and selling out of your collection, how did you sell watches? Did you go on eBay or did you sell person to person at like the pre-Red Bar, the predecessor to Red Bar?
Right. I was lucky enough to have kind of a local network of watch buddies.
Yes.
And, you have your small network and then each guy has their small network. So, I did some eBay. Not overly successful on eBay, but, it was more like trading with friends and, some small internet sales.
Yeah, it's good to do face-to-face, especially if you sort of know the person you're selling with. I always recommend selling face-to-face in a bank. Go into a bank, grab some of the free coffee, get yourself a free lollipop, and under the protection of closed-circuit TV cameras, surrounded by armed guards, execute the deal there. If a guy says, meet me down by the pier, maybe don't do that deal. But that's how I always like it. Let's do a face-to-face, let's do it in a bank. Adult supervision, a notary available if necessary for a bill of sale. So other questions coming through, and okay. Question from David Hefkin. I guess this is a Tim question here. What do you guys think about the JLC 899 all gold rotor versus the old 899? This is really a lot like, do you like pre or post Patek Philippe seal? Honestly, I can see. You're not going to change the value of the watch. There's no inherent value change in the watch. So the question is, which one do you like better? For me, the look of the rhodium-plated rotor with the gold winding mass on the end is a long-time signature of JLC, and it's what I love to see when I look at the display case back of my old Master Moon. I enjoy that. I love the fact that you've seen it on Vacheron, you've seen it on Patek models in some cases, you've seen it on APs, and you see it on JLCs. To me, that's like a signature that I'd prefer, personally. It will not make a material difference in the value of the watch, and Jason can confirm.
Yeah, it's just personal preference at that point.
Okay, so here's a question from Captain Zed. Jason, this looks like it's going to have to go through Rolex channels, or at least an authorized dealer, but Captain Zed asks, how would we go about getting a real Jubilee bracelet for my GMT versus the standard Oyster? I'd have to say, let's qualify this first and ensure that it's a GMT of a generation such that a Jubilee was actually made for it. So pre-super case.
Right.
You'd go through a Rolex authorized dealer.
I guess, and then you'd have to find one that would be willing to order you one for that type of activity. A lot of the local jewelers, if they're going to order a part direct from Rolex, are going to want serial number for the watch and stuff like that. So, and it'd have to be pre-maxi case, like you said, because I don't think the new Jubilees fit that case.
Yeah, there's, again, since roughly 2007, when the all-steel supercase GMT extinguished the last of the 5 digits, there has not been compatibility. So Questions coming in. Okay, so maybe Jason can find us 2 IWCs. You've got his contact. He will get you those IWCs. Okay, Trevor Phillips asks, Tim, I have the same size wrist as you. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, oval in cross section. Do you think I would find a Rolex ceramic Submariner too large for daily wear? I don't, because Rolex understands you can make, and Jason, you've seen this, you can make a bigger watch, you can't make a bigger customer.
Right.
So, I mean, based on your experience, if you can wear the 5-digit sub, can you wear the 6-digit sub?
I think so. I think they're universally. I think for a bigger guy, I like the maxi case, but I've seen guys interchange, and I think you can, if you can wear the smaller case, you can wear the larger case. Maybe not, the other way around. I guess it just depends on your preference, but I personally like the maxi case for I have about a 7.5-inch wrist.
And I can tell you, having worn every modern Rolex ever made, yes, you can absolutely wear a modern generation ceramic super case Submariner on a small wrist. I would say you could even wear that watch on a wrist a little bit smaller than mine. And of course, there's always the option of Rubber Bee and Everest straps, as well as our friends at Horus. If you want to neck down even a little bit more, wear it smaller, tighter, and more compact, the rubber strap will accomplish that. Question from Eric Cecil. Okay, let's modify Eric's question. What's your favorite brand, Jason? People know mine. The question is, what is my second favorite brand? I need to know your first.
I don't know if I have a first favorite. I guess right now I'd probably say Panerai. If you're gonna narrow it down.
Okay.
It's tough though.
Are you a Panerai purist? Do you like shun the Carbotech and the chronographs, or is your mind open at just about
No,
everything?
I'm open to pretty much anything. I mean, I don't know that I'd wear a Carbotech, personally, but I like the idea of exploring new materials. I think pushing the science boundaries in watches is important because the industry can become very stagnant if we don't do that, and then it becomes refining gears as opposed to branching out and finding new materials. So
regarding last year's controversial debut, are you a do-a guy or a do-not guy?
I would say do not. I don't really care for the do-a. I tried a lot, and it's not my style.
Fair enough. Okay, so question again, Eric Cecil. My favorite brand is JLC. It has my heart. My first and favorite. But I will say that I have very soft spots for Zenith, Audemars Piguet, and maybe Vacheron, but the quirky Vacherons. I mean, like the crazy stuff. Like I mentioned the Sputnik, also the Mercator, the Saltarello, stuff like that. The Patriot Perpetual Calendar Chronograph, 2nd generation overseas New York boutique special edition. Those are, Zenith is second. Like, there is no doubt Zenith is my second favorite brand for a lot of the same reasons. I love JLC. Longa is also in the mix. So that's where I'm coming from. But I am going to complete my JLC collection. You'd like to mix it up.
Still have a way to go?
I have a roadmap.
I thought you finished that already.
No, I have a minute repeater to buy and a vintage piece.
Okay.
And then I'm sure I'll figure something else out. Okay. Matthew M. Zenith Chronomaster Caliber 410 triple calendar, Rolex Hulk, Blancpain Super Trofeo. Which would you purchase as an only watch?
The only watch ever that I can wear?
Yeah, if you have to have one of those, and moreover, it is your only watch, period.
I'd have to go 410, probably.
The Chronomaster 410, the triple calendar.
Yeah, I would say, I have a soft spot for Zenith, too. I love the El Primero. Just phenomenal watch, even though the Hulk is probably the more rugged option. As far as being able to beat on the watch, I think the 410, I just love that case.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I would take the Charles Vermeau limited edition with the sunburst blue dial, and I would pick that. As much as I love green, the image of the Rolex Hulk is not necessarily in tune with my own personal tastes, and we're looking for one to own, not one to sell. So while the Rolex has a permanent market, and it's the easier one to unload, we're looking at an only watch. I would grab onto that like dear life.
Yeah.
If I only have my one watch, I'm definitely not selling it. We agree. Chronomaster Caliber 410 triple calendar moonphase. For good measure, I would go way back in time to the heady days of 1999 and get one of the Chronomaster 410s with the black dial and the 40mm case and steel. Okay. Okay, so here's an interesting question. Tim, I want to buy a Black Bay Tudor, but I can't make up my mind on the ETA or the in-house. This comes up again. Jason, kill this thing dead.
Go ETA. In my opinion, you spend less money, get something that's going to be a little bit more desirable. Any of the variations in ETA are going to be more desirable than the in-house because we know there's going to be more in-houses produced over a long term. But I would say to put it to bed, black dial, old bracelet, stainless steel.
And the $50,000 question from user Hepaka. $50,000 question, Platinum Daytona or 5235 Patek Philippe Regulator? What's your take, Jason?
I mean, you got to go Patek.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you there. The 5235 happens to be my all-time favorite Patek Philippe, and I have held and experienced just about all of them. Well, we agree. And on that note, Jason, thank you.
Thank you for
really
having me.
cool joining.
Yeah, absolutely.
My new Monday companion, Jason Main. He will be back for Mailbag next week. Federico is on this Wednesday. Join Federico on our Instagram account. Definitely follow him because he's chatting watches 24 hours a day on Instagram. I want to thank Jesse for ably manning the switcher and loading my show. Thank you, Jason, for joining us, and thank you. I'm Tim. He's Jason. He's Jesse. He's Fed. This is Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on.